Ukraine erases Russia's $250 million Crimean drone hub in a 75-second precision strike. In just 75 seconds, Ukraine delivered a blow that Russia never expected and could not stop one that wiped out an entire drone repair hub, shattered multiple layers of air defenses, and destroyed more than $250 million worth of military assets, with a strike package costing barely $70,000. What unfolded was not luck, but a perfectly timed operation that exploited every weakness in Crimea's defensive shield. A low-altitude missile infiltration, a precision takedown of S-400 and S-500 systems, a jamming-immune drone kill chain, and a final wave of FPV and heavy drones that turned Russia's most important UAV facility into a burning crater. By the end, Russia lost its primary reconnaissance eyes over the Black Sea, nearly 70% of its aerial surveillance capacity, forcing commanders into a crisis they cannot easily solve. How did Ukraine manage to cut through advanced air defenses, trigger cascading explosions inside reinforced hangars, and inflict more than $250 million in losses in under 2 minutes? Let's know from the beginning. Today at 2:47 a.m., the silence over occupied Crimea broke as Ukrainian forces executed a tightly coordinated, low-cost strike with significant effects. An operation that erased a $250 million Russian drone repair hub in just 75 seconds. The target was the Kurovsky airfield, the primary maintenance center for Russia's Orion reconnaissance drones in Crimea. For weeks, Ukrainian intelligence had monitored the base, watching patterns, observing repair cycles, and waiting for a moment when the Russians would cluster their unmanned aircraft in one location. That moment arrived shortly before dawn, when about a dozen Orion drones, each worth between $5 million and $10 million, were grounded for simultaneous servicing. Some had suffered engine failures. Others had sustained electronic degradation from Ukrainian jamming operations. Analysts assessed this as the highest observed concentration of Russian UAV assets gathered in one place since the start of the war. From a financial perspective alone, those grounded aircraft represented more than $100 million in hardware. When combined with helicopters, hangars, air defense radars, and electronic warfare vehicles positioned nearby, the total value of assets at Kurovsky is estimated to exceed $250 million. Ukraine, preparing to strike with munitions costing no more than $70,000, understood that the ratio of investment to potential loss was unusually favorable. The only remaining step was timing. By 2:45 a.m., with confirmation that the Russian maintenance crews had committed to a full overnight repair cycle, Ukraine launched the first phase. 2 Flamingo FP-5 low-altitude missiles skimmed across the terrain at roughly 160 feet, traveling beneath Russia's layered radar coverage. Their guidance fused GPS with inertial navigation, allowing them to operate cleanly, even under moderate jamming. The rigidly flat terrain of the peninsula made it possible for the missiles to hug the earth and remain nearly invisible to long-range Russian detection systems. Inside an air defense bunker near Yevpatoria, an operator manning the S-400 Triumph system detected 2 faint returns on his screen and authorized the launch of 2 40N6 interceptors, missiles worth several $1 million each. These interceptors accelerated to hypersonic speeds, streaking upward at Mach 14. Their trajectory, however, assumed the intruding missiles would climb. The Flamingo missiles did not. Remaining low and steady, they slipped beneath the engagement envelope. A 3-second processing delay within the S-400's tracking computer removed any chance of reacquisition. By 2:46 a.m., the first Flamingo missile slammed into the S-400's 92 N6E engagement radar, destroying it with a 540 lb warhead. The second disabled an S-500 support node covering the Kerch corridor. Because the S-500 is optimized for exo-atmospheric targets and cannot effectively track objects below approximately 500 feet, the strike landed without resistance. With both systems degraded, a low-altitude corridor opened through Russia's air defense network. Ukraine immediately activated the second phase. A Bar's high-speed drone munition, flying at roughly 500 miles per hour at an altitude just above 200 feet, rushed toward the airfield. Russia's remaining defenses attempted to compensate. A Podony 2 electronic warfare truck engaged its jamming suite, flooding the airwaves with electromagnetic noise. But Ukrainian planners had anticipated this. The Bar's drone operated autonomously, using inertial and internal GPS guidance. Autonomous INS GPS mitigated the jamming. Moments later, the drone struck the Podony 2 vehicle, disabling it entirely and removing the last electronic protective layer over Kirovsky. For the remainder of the 75-second window, Russian radar coverage was fractured. Their jamming power was gone, and their optical sensors struggled under rapidly shifting thermal and dust conditions. That was when Ukraine committed the third phase, a wave of 10 FPV drones entering through the newly created gap. Each FPV drone cost no more than a few $1,000s. Each carried a small shaped charge. The swarm approached the airfield in 5 synchronized pairs, flying at altitudes under 130 feet. These drones, simple yet highly maneuverable, were designed to saturate short-range defensive systems. The airfield's remaining protection consisted of a single Pantsir S-1 unit and 2 Tor M2 systems. The Tor units opened fire first, successfully intercepting 4 of the incoming drones. The Pantsir eliminated 2 more, achieving 6 kills in total. These were disciplined, measured interceptions, and for a brief moment, Russian operators believed they had regained control. But the last 4 FPVs split into 4 separate approach angles. This sudden divergence overloaded the Pantsir's automated tracking. The system transitioned from missile mode to high-velocity 30mm cannon fire, creating a dense curtain of fragmentation. 2 drones were destroyed. The remaining 2 slipped beneath the coverage arcs. One struck the Pantsir's radar array, disabling its ability to track. The second hit the missile tubes, rendering the system disarmed. With Pantsir down and 1 Tor degraded, defenses were nearly neutralized. One remaining operational Tor M2 detected a larger, slower FP2 decoy drone. The operator launched a 9M331 interceptor missile. It connected perfectly, destroying the drone in a bright fireball about 1.5 miles from the base. But the destruction was intentional. The FP2 was a decoy, a Judas drone designed to produce a massive cloud of smoke, ash, and metal particles. The resulting aerosol formed a dense radar-scattering screen that blinded the Tor's sensors, its optical feed filled with soot, its radar display flooded with false reflections. Without visual or radar guidance, the vehicle was rendered non-functional. Through that blind corridor came the actual strike element, 2 FP2 heavy drones operating via fiber optic guidance. The first maintained a low flight profile, hugging the terrain before angling upward at a shallow degree and diving onto the steel roof of the main hangar. Its 231 lb Monroe effect warhead created a supersonic jet of molten copper that cut through the roof and into the Orion drones inside. It pierced one aircraft, then another, triggering a cascading internal explosion. Fuel tanks ignited, lithium-ion batteries ruptured, avionics combusted. In seconds, more than $100 million worth of reconnaissance aircraft was destroyed. While the hangar erupted from within, the second FP2 approached the Mi-8 line helicopters positioned along the tarmac. These helicopters, each carrying thousands of pounds of fuel, represented another significant financial and operational asset. The drone struck the lead aircraft directly, igniting a chain reaction as burning fuel spilled across the runway and into a secondary maintenance bay. Within minutes, the flames expanded into a firestorm that consumed everything in its path. The value of the destroyed helicopters and support equipment pushed Russian losses even higher, well beyond $150 million and nearing $200 million, even before accounting for radars, EW vehicles, and ammunition stocks. By the end of the 75 seconds, Ukraine's total cost remained near $70,000, while Russia had lost more than $250 million in aircraft, infrastructure, air defense components, and electronic warfare assets. The financial disparity was staggering, a ratio of destruction exceeding 3,500 to 1. What followed was physical devastation visible for miles. A plume of black smoke rose nearly 3,000 feet into the air. Satellite sensors later detected a prolonged thermal signature, assessed to exceed 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit for over 7 hours. Analysts noted that not only had Russia lost its most important drone repair hub in Crimea, but it had also lost any realistic ability to restore those assets quickly. The Khovsky airfield had been the sole high-level repair facility for the Orion drone line in the Black Sea region. With its destruction, Russia's long-range aerial surveillance capability dropped by an estimated 70%. The Black Sea Fleet, which relied heavily on Orions to detect Ukrainian strike aircraft and missile launchers, suddenly found itself operating with significantly reduced situational awareness. The broader strategic impact was immediate. Russian command authorities faced an urgent dilemma: reinforce Crimea's air defense network, or maintain protection over frontline troops. With the Pantsir destroyed, the S-400 radar lost, the S-500 node struck, the Podony EW system eliminated, and the Tor units degraded, Crimea's air defense coverage had developed a notable weakness. This weakness prompted the redeployment of air defense resources from other regions, an action that inherently exposed those areas to increased risk. Ukrainian planners understood this dynamic. By inflicting more than $250 million in damage with just $70,000 in equipment, they had not simply destroyed aircraft, they had created a new operational imbalance. Russian commanders now needed to redistribute their limited short-range and mid-range systems across a wider geographic area, leaving gaps that Ukraine could exploit in future operations. In effect, the strike did more than damage Russian assets. It reshaped Russian defensive priorities under pressure. The operation also carried an information component. For years, Russian officials claimed Crimea was a fortress, untouchable, impenetrable, protected by the most advanced defensive network in Europe. The destruction of Khovsky undermined that narrative. The sight of burning aircraft and shattered hangars forced Russian leadership to confront a new reality. Their rear bases were no longer safe. By the end of the day, Ukraine's strike had achieved multiple layers of success, eliminating high-value aircraft worth more than $100 million, destroying radars and air defense platforms worth tens of millions more, inflicting a total strategic setback exceeding $250 million, and doing so at a cost so low it barely registered compared to the scale of destruction. Operationally, Russia lost not just machines, but its primary reconnaissance capability over the Black Sea. Strategically, it lost confidence and predictability, and tactically, it lost the ability to maintain stable air defense coverage over its Crimean strongholds. The remaining question is how Russia will attempt to compensate for the sudden collapse of its aerial reconnaissance network, and whether any measure it takes will be enough to prevent another strike of similar scale.